It's the West Indian accent. Oh God, sorry.
Yo, Dory was so funny. Oh my gosh. I knew it immediately.
Oh my goodness. All right. So, welcome to another episode of Reels and Riddims, brought to you by Carry On Friends in partnership with the Style to the Vibes and Breadfruit Media. And Reels and Riddims brings you commentaries, reviews, and perspective to what's on the world of TV, film, and concert with enough vibes as only Michaela and I can. Through the lens of Caribbean culture, Caribbean American, immigrant, and first generation experiences. Welcome. How are you, my dupes? Maybe people don't know based on that co-open, but we already know.
Yes, we already know. Honestly, I cannot wait to get into the conversation. There were so many nostalgic moments, I think, from this particular um project that we are
Yes.
going to talk about. So, yes, my girl, wagwan,
Yeah.
wagwan.
So we are talking about the documentary, The Honorable Shine, or
You have to say,
Honorable,
you have to say like that.
the
God, big bad bounty killer, don't.
the Honorable Shine, which is a documentary which chronicles Moses Shine Barrow's rise to stardom, incarceration, and reemergence as a political leader in his home country of Belize. Me get it, right? That's it. That's the gist of
Highlights
it. Good,
everything, everything. Yes,
good.
yes, yes.
But before we get into our reviews, we have another real list segment coming up. And the real list is usually a list of movies, in this case, documentaries, and it's following a theme. And the theme for this real list is music or musicians. So, run it, Michaela. What is your favorite list of documentaries about music and musicians?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And I gotta keep it short. Some of them I haven't seen yet, and I have some that I need to watch and some that I have watched. You guys already know the Biggie, the Bob Marley one. Those are two that I've seen. I've also the Beatles one. It came out in the movie theater a while ago.
Mm.
And This Is Pop, which you put me onto on Netflix, which is a mini series around pop. It was like 4 episodes around pop music and in the golden era of like 90s or into 2000. My favorite scamming manager for the
In
NSYNC
Sync and Backstreet
and
Boys.
Backstreet Boys. That was wildly eye opening.
I told you.
What was the name of it? I forget the name, but
I
we just we nickname it Scammer
scam
Business
business.
because it was that like eye opening. Like
It
him
was
take
the
the people
longest
money,
running
him take
Ponzi
them
scheme
people
in
their money for do
America.
what and did what and then
Hmm.
what twice. Lord. But what's on my list? Luther's Never Too Much. It's one of the ones that I want to watch. I think it released in the theater. Um, and then I don't know if this counts as a documentary, but Beyonce just does really great visual projects. I still like um Beachella from the her Coachella. I find myself going back to that and watching that. And then the album that was inspired by all the African artists that she worked with, I think like that was just so visually stunning. Um, yeah, I don't think it's a documentary. It was just good. What about yours? That was a long list.
Yeah, that list longer than mine. Cause you said short and you kept
I
going
know,
and
I know,
going.
I know, I know. Sorry,
And
sorry.
then you said Bob Marley. I'm like, but which one? But anyway,
Is it I Shot the Sheriff?
I Shot the Sheriff is on my list.
Okay. There's Bob Marley and then there's I Shot the Sheriff.
I Shot
Ooh,
the Sheriff is on
I
my
Shot it.
list.
Okay.
Um, Quincy is on my list.
Mm.
Biggie is on my list. Thriller is on my list.
I like the
Um,
making of Thriller, the video.
Oh, yeah, no, with a talk about
Yes.
the documentary where we whole reviewed the 40th
Oh,
anniversary
okay.
of
Yeah, yeah,
Thriller
yeah. No, 40th anniversary of
versus
Thriller. Yeah,
Thriller.
yeah.
Yeah,
That was really good. Yeah.
yeah. And then I like the one on Motown that I told you about, Hitsville, the making of Motown. Loved that one. Absolutely loved it. So those are my favorites.
Yes. Definitely adding some to my list.
Yes. And of course, I love Luther. I know so much Luther songs, so whenever me get a chance to watch what he has
I
come.
don't know much about Luther outside of his catalog, so I think that this is would be perfect for me.
Yeah, yeah. Love,
Because
love,
all I
love.
know of Luther is his music. That's it.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really all I know. So
Ye-
I'm yeah. Me not even gonna try to do Luther. 'Cause
No, no,
me
no.
not even.
No, you can't do high Luther. You have to go like the voice when Luther goes, "Ooh,"
Yes,
like
yes,
a, like what is that? All
yes.
right. All right. So now let's get into the main thing. Michaela, you is the music journalist, so are you are on the episode here?
Yes. So there were so many different elements of the documentary itself. And it almost kind of comes together in like three parts. It's like Shine's adolescent life, his life as a rapper, and then his trajectory uh, post getting out of prison and becoming a political party leader in Belize. So I think that there is so much there, especially to kind of break down. Like, I had no idea that his biological father was a political leader. If that was something that I did not know, and I don't follow Belizean politics, so I didn't know too much about the parties and everything until he became the opposition leader. And that's when I was like, oh, I think Shine is one of those people who kind of eludes you in terms of music unless he's like in your face, kind of. But I've been hearing a lot more from him in recent years because he's been back on the US soil, really connecting with some of his political counterparts and entertainment counterparts. And so we've been seeing him a lot kind of talking about his position as a political leader. And so this documentary for me kind of gives a surface view as to who he is as a person, what his childhood was like, and how he kind of has transcended into the man that he is today. And it gives us a good enough backstory. And I'll tell you why I think it's good enough. Um, but I think overall it was very top line, right? It didn't give you too much, it didn't give you too little, but it allowed you to connect the dots to his story. What were your initial thoughts?
You already know. I feel like it was just very surface level. I wanted more. Um, I felt like, as you know, and I can quote the chat, like I didn't want to relitigate the trial. I didn't care for it. Like you had to mention it, kind of like what we did in the Biggie thing. Like it is a fact, right? You talk about it, but I didn't want to dwell on it. And I think there was a lot of time spent on that. Whereas I wanted to get a little bit more. They left a lot of lines or space when he converted to Judaism, right? And what when he went from dressing and appearing as an Orthodox Jews with the payat and all of that stuff to now not having the payat, but where is he in his Judaism, right? So, and then, getting into political life. So I thought it was surface level. I wanted more, but I think it was a fine starter. I think if I had to weigh it on things that I didn't know before the documentary, was just how much um he had such a good music deal um before he put out a record, and it was just like, wait a minute. I was there trying to do maths in my head, oh, how is that? Like, it was stunning. He didn't have a hit record or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Nori's commentary was so colorful because he was just like, "What?" Like
Yeah.
he was people were seeing this real time and they were just like, "Oh my gosh, like what is this?"
But also,
I
I don't think even at that time we really kind of recall the media frenzy that is today has social media, right? And that wasn't necessarily a thing. So the most that you heard was really magazines, industry people behind the scenes really talking. And if you were in those spaces and places, then you would have heard it. I think, to my recollection, the last time I heard like a real bidding war was really around Drake. And I think because of who he was at that time and the way the media was kind of transcending at that time, it was a little bit more publicly known, right? Because in addition to the gossip, we are now talking about the music business at that time. Whereas back when Shine was, it was mostly consumer driven gossip. And then the biggest thing around Shine that they touched upon in the documentary was his similarity to Biggie when people first heard him, and how many people created, that link or thought about that. And it even played into his kind of beef that with Junior
yeah,
Mafia.
Mafia.
And really at the time period of when Shine was, I was trying to like play it out in my mind, because if you think about it, Mace was signed to Bad Boy. The Locks was trying to get out of Bad Boy. Biggie was gone. Kim, Faith, Mary, they were all like kind of total. They weren't really doing a whole lot at that time, and this is post Biggie, pre the second wave of him coming Diddy. Like that there was like this kind of center focus on just Shine at that particular time, because he was really the only artist that was. I think Mace was still there, but I think Mace was kind of coming down off of his first album and kind of still working really. And so when we kind of heard about Shine, it was really the Bad Boys record. And by that time, he had already signed the deal, and he had already. So we didn't really hear about the bidding war for him necessarily. I had never heard him on a mixtape. I'd never heard of him. Nobody in the streets were really talking about him the way that we're talking about 50 or the Locks, or you know what I mean, like some of the other up and coming artists that were coming up around that time that you heard on mixtapes. I did not hear him.
But the bidding war existed, I think, because of FOMO, right? It wasn't because in I'm not saying that he wasn't talented, but it was because, oh wow, is oh Michaela try get that for $50. Oh, mega try get that for 200. That, like, you understand what I said? Like that's what it was, not on anything else. And
Mhm.
so again, not to discredit his talent, but it was just who was flexing more, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
That's really what it was. You said something earlier about his tone and people thinking, he sounded like Biggie. At first listen, that's what people will think to, because you're trying to make a comparison. And I think Nori, in all his comedic sense, kind of said it. It wasn't that when he wasn't trying to be like Biggie or sound like Biggie, because when you talk, he clearly, this is how he
Mhm,
talks,
mhm,
right? And he's like, it wasn't even the delivery, it was the West Indian accent, right?
mhm, mhm,
But it makes me go back to a time when I was really young. And I remember when Buju just came out and everyone said he was trying to sound like Shaba, right? And then, all the chatter around that. And then once Buju was established, when Jigsy King came out, everyone said Jigsy King was trying to sound like Buju.
mhm,
So, it's our ear is funny, and how we create points of references to
mhm.
understand when something is new, we compare it to something else. And over time we realize, like, in this day, like there's no way Shaba and Buju sound alike, right?
Mhm,
But it's
mhm,
kind of what people use to connect. And, I think Little C's said it, clearly, like the timing of Shine, kind of when they were still grieving Biggie, was just really salt in their wound and their
mhm,
grief. And
mhm.
so, I thought that was really interesting because I didn't even realize that that was an issue either.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I did. It was kind of in the back of my mind, and I think that's why even his success kind of eluded me up until this documentary, to be completely transparent, because I had heard the singles that were released, but I had never heard his album. It wasn't until after watched the documentary that I went back to his album and actually listened to it. And to be honest, I had to go back and look at the timeline of when it was released, because I'm just like, this feels so closely related to what was happening in the documentary and what he's talking about in these songs, like lyrically. So even like the opening of the documentary, it's the intro to his first album. He just changed some of the verbiage in the verse, but it's essentially the same intro that he had on his first album. And he just changed the words, cleaned it up a bit. It's the same thing that he did in his performance when he did it with Diddy on, it looked like on an award show, and he kind of changed some of the lyrics to be a little bit more positive. So he's very cognizant of who he is now and how he wants to be represented.
mhm.
But even at that time, I had really only just heard those two singles, Bad Boys and Bonnie and Shine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did hear him on the remix of Total, one of the Total songs.
Okay. Yeah.
I
I don't
do
know. I
remember
tried.
that. Um, I think it was Sitting Home, was the remix. Because remember back in those days, you'd have the single, when we did have CD, and then on the CD you had
You had
multiple
to.
remix,
Yeah.
and so
It's
that's
a
how I,
single CD.
yeah, the single CD, because
Yeah.
we going in the
Yeah.
archives with this one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the CD of the album,
No,
the
but the
single.
single
Go
CD where I had like six
six,
tracks. It had
the remix, and then the remix of the remix. It's just,
it's a remix part one and part two, and that was the remix era. So
I mean, you know which remix CD that I wish I still have? Maybe I still have it. The Tony Braxton, "You're Making Me High," because there's no other place where you're gonna hear the Tony Braxton Mad Cobra remix. You can't even find it on any of these
can't
streaming
find it. You have
platforms.
to, yeah. It has to
Listen,
be a dub. Yeah.
that is the baddest remix. Like to this day, anytime Tony Braxton, "You're Making Me High" come that on,
That's the one you
that's the one
sit
I'm
back
singing.
on and you think about. Any,
Yes, yes,
minimum.
yes.
I think
Anyway,
other surprising moments that you didn't know.
um, I don't think anything else, because I did know about his father. Um, I wanted to say this. Why if friend Derek could have been Andrea brother, right? And he kind of remind me of Kiss too. The friend who was talking,
Castillo, what was his name? I don't remember
Derek
his last.
Castillo.
Garrett
Yes.
Castillo.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I wonder if he related to Andrea. Andrea, don't kill me because your name Castillo. But I'm like, then could have been brother. In his live interview, him darker, but like when you go back to the pictures where
It could be related to her.
yeah,
We should ask.
we should ask her. Cause I was
Yeah.
just like, and she is from Belize, so I'm just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what are the odds, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think the part that intrigued me the most was his conversion to Judaism, because um not because everyone else goes in and comes out Muslim. I did not realize that he was living in Israel at the time, for 2 years. I didn't realize that.
Well, I didn't know he was dating Brandy. Sure didn't know that. Sure didn't. I think
Michaela went straight to the Met.
I was just like, wait, what?
Wait,
Yes.
did you know Mace was also like
Yeah, I knew
okay,
Mace, and I had heard the through the rumor mill of what was happening at. I
go
wasn't
ahead.
aware about Brandy. I didn't realize that there was supposed to be this big push between
Him and
Barrington
Barrington Levy.
Levy
Yeah,
promoting the album and the
yeah.
single, and I think that would have been so
So
good because
yeah.
we hadn't seen that before. I think to your point, there was a lot left out. And I think even they shared a lot about his childhood in Belize, but when he got here, like you didn't get to understand like how he transpired to this kid
Street
who didn't
life.
how did he get into the street life? Like what was his involvement really? And that might be on purpose, because he is a political figure. Maybe he doesn't want to put it all out there, or he might be writing a book and he's going to put it in the book versus put it in the documentary. I don't know, but there's definitely room for more. And I was even kind of curious about the reconciliation between him and his father, because essentially that really happened while he was doing time, how they reconciled. And at that time, his father wasn't a prime minister yet,
No, he
right?
was
So he was a
a
political
political lead.
figurehead, but he wasn't prime minister yet. So his dad became prime minister while he was in prison, and prior to him becoming a prime minister is when they kind of rekindled their relationship. And like how has that grown, and like what was that trajectory? I think those were some of the things to me. And even like I think we heard about his conversion to Judaism, and we saw it, like the physical changes that he made to become a Hasidic Jew, and we saw him in the news. It kind of like I felt like it just aloofed us, like it was just like, oh, okay.
Well, well,
But yeah, like to your point, I didn't realize he was in Israel for a few years.
it wasn't surprising because I also understand, the religious history and, so none of it was very surprising. I understood even this idea of Black Jew. It was more of a little bit more of why he chose that path, why he continued to, why he specifically chose to go Orthodox, right? Which is very different from just converting to Judaism, right? And so I just wanted to get a little bit more about that. He
Yeah, they
clearly,
didn't really talk about him passing the time in prison. Like, what did
yeah,
he do? It was just like he went to prison, then
he
he
no,
came
and no,
out.
they did. He chose. That's why he chose Judaism, right? Because he said that protected him while he was in prison. So I got that. But why he went a specific way? It's almost like, why did you choose to become born again Christian, or you choose to go Baptist, or you choose to go 7 Day Adventist, right? Let's think of it in those things. Like,
Yeah,
why did he choose to be Orthodox? Was something that I was just curious about. I'm not saying it was wrong. It was a
yeah,
curiosity because it clearly helped him to think of a certain path. What I appreciated was him dealing with this identity crisis. And as you know, I think a lot of what we deal with culturally is an identity crisis, a shifting of that identity. And the friend finally tell him like, yo, give up the ghost of rapping, that not work for you anymore. But it's been so part of his identity for such a long time, and trying to reconcile,
hmm,
this new thing that he's embracing, that it's now part of his life, and this idea, this thing that he really wanted to become, especially when you feel like people have leapfrogged over you and been more successful, and whether are you are you still living in your potential, or has it passed? And I think that struggle, that was very clear. But you know a little bit more, because he didn't just pick up one day and maybe if we go back and say, yeah, you kind of saw the early signs when he chose to not rob the people anymore and beat up people for the try broke into the apartment. Like maybe you could see that's the early signs of him wanting to do good in his community. But like when he went back to Belize, there's a whole gap that wasn't filled in from the time he book off the hotel room for just kind of stay by himself to the point where he's become involved in the community. The timeline didn't make sense. And I think maybe that's what it is. Maybe they told it, but the
Mhm.
timeline, it wasn't put together in a timeline where you and I could like, wait, but it feel like it was this and then it come round us to this. So he went back to Belize for a little bit. Then it seemed like he went to Israel for 2 years. And then when he came back from Israel to Belize, there's a gap there. He just kind of went into politics and it was just like,
To me, what I was thinking about as I kind of reflected upon watching it, I wanted to hear more directly from him. Right? We heard a lot from other, because he's still alive to really tell his story. And so we did not get to hear in his voice him answering very specific things like, why did he choose Bad Boy? Why did he feel so aligned to
I think
that
it was
label?
intentional, Michaela. He's a sitting
No,
political.
no, I
Yeah.
know, but what I'm saying is, it's still a documentary. It's a music documentary about his transition, right? But I, to your point, maybe they did talk about it and it might have gotten edited out.
He did
Um,
talk about why he chose Bad Boy. He said
no,
it. He didn't say it, but
he
it
didn't
was
say it.
secondhand. It was
It
secondhand.
was secondhand, but
Yeah.
it still wasn't definitive.
Yeah. It was
It
just
was
like he was
it
the
was
Michael
just like
Jackson.
he was the person that, and the thing about it is the algorithm, once you start searching stuff. I was watching part of another interview and he really talked about why he went, and this is after this has been released. He talked about why he went to Bad Boy. He talked about the Michael. He kind of went in a bit on the why he thought Puff was the Michael Jackson of that era and why he signed. So it's not like the information isn't out there. It just wasn't part of this documentary.
Yeah.
But this documentary, again, it allows you to do more research and to understanding like some of the timelines. Because I think I even was confused on some of the timeline things that were happening, like to your point. So I think that he could, or it could have been included in the documentary a little bit more from his personal perspective, because unlike Biggie, where we don't have him to really talk about it, and we only have past footage that it's clipped together into a cohesive story, he's there. You can get it directly from him and his words and his emotions. And so we there was a lot of focus on the industry contributing on what it meant to him and his career, more so than what it meant to him as a human being. And I think that that was what I wanted more of, because he's such a dynamic force right now that I think people are so intrigued and interested on how he transcended to where he is. 8 years is a really long time. I just watched Martha. Martha went in on her 5 months that she was there and what she did. You spent 8 years. You could literally talk about that for a good 15 to 20 minutes. Who came to see you? What was the industry
He
like?
did
How did you
talk about,
how
he
did you
talked,
sign to Def Jam? Like, what was that? Like, how do
it
you
was
sign
just
to Puff
like,
for one album and then sign to Def Jam for one album and then
but
go
it
off
goes
the
to,
rails?
but it goes to my point. It focused too much on certain things and not enough on other things. That
Yeah.
was kind of my thing. So it just kind of felt like I don't care about, I get, right? I get about the trial, right? But I don't care to relitigate it. We could talk about how it feels, but let's talk about like the transformation, right? Like there are plenty
I
other
didn't even
things.
mind so much the trial part, because essentially, again, even at that time, I wasn't really looking. I was looking at the headlines, but I wasn't
No,
into
I'm
the
not even talking
details
about
of.
back then. It's just talked about a lot. So, and again, even in the telling of the trial, it really didn't focus on him. It did not, if you go
But
back,
the trial wasn't really focused on it was focused on him as the fall person, but it wasn't focused on him in the media.
which is kind of why I was like, we could
Yeah.
have done without this. Let me talk
I don't
hear
know if we
more
could
of.
have done without it. I think we
We could have
needed that.
truncated. We could have truncated a lot. Let
I
me.
think we could have shifted it, but it was a huge part of who
No,
he
I'm not.
was.
I'm not saying that it should have been omitted, right? Remember in Biggie, I got a story to tell. They did talk about it. I appreciated hearing from his mother, his uncle, his aunt. I appreciated hearing from them because and the friend Derek and all the people who knew him, because that's where you get to see him before he became this person. You started to see a little bit of the transformation.
Mhm.
But it was just then, now we're a child, and it was just like, okay, fine, we have to go through this motion. But then I just felt like, I didn't learn more. But I really appreciated the stories that the aunt told when them used to go country, and him used to, you want going at the big pool. Those are things that I feel like as an adult you go back to, and clearly you do, because in the end when him a chuck off the boat and they go swimming at the deep, like that is something that comes out of childhood. So I really appreciated, and wanted to see more, because remember when we learned more about Biggie as a child, that helped us to understand, certain things about him.
Mhm.
um
But also, I think this actually showed the similarities between he and Biggie and the major differences, right? I think for Biggie, music was a part of his entire life, whereas for Shine, that wasn't necessarily the case. It was this secondary thing that he practiced and got really good at. And there's a very big difference there. And even to Nori's point, they initially had a similar sound, but when you listen to them, their cadence, what they talked about, how they talked about it, stylistically there are similarities, but it's not even the West Indian accent. It's the stylistic integrity of the wordplay, I think. Like they don't have the same patterns, but their ability to play on certain words, and then that deep tone that he kind of goes into draws that natural similarity.
mhm.
Uh, and he didn't really talk too much about the Biggie comparisons either, or how he felt about them. But their moms felt, oh my God, like I feel like they could be having some tea at a table and just can draw the little, like I just see those two women sitting in Brooklyn at each other house, just trading stories about their crazy kids.
Yeah,
Like
I
to
real
me, like that actually, like it remind the documentaries to me, like when they talked about like their childhood, and it showed so many similarities and so many differences between the two of them, that I think that this kind of really pulls them apart in terms of that similarities that people might have had in their mind.
Yeah, and the role their mothers play in their life is very central, right? There was one guy in the documentary. I didn't catch his name, but he basically, they were talking about nepotism. And you know, yes, he had opportunities because of the position his uncle had and the position his father have. And what's interesting, the uncle that they're talking about is his maternal uncle. So that's his mother's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And his mother's brother is close political allies and friends with his father,
Mm-hmm.
right? So just to clear that. But when they were talking about it,
Maybe that's how they meet.
that's his, listen, me not think about
I'll
that.
that me want know how the two them buck up in and then one another have this picnic.
But the idea of nepotism, and what bothered me about that was, I think people have blurred the real definition of nepotism. Yes, like nepotism is if you get this favoritism because I'm related to you, but it's also if it's not on merit. Like, so if me, I go promote you just because you're my son, you know, I've no interest in it, you know, I've the skill to do it, then yeah, but you know, to make it like, oh, you know, let's just say if I made up the bed, you know, I make it easy for you to sleep. You know, there has to be some talent there. So that's the part that I didn't like about it, where it was just like, okay, fine, his father and uncle played a role, but it wasn't like he's not capable or he didn't show that he at least deserved it because he was working towards it. So that was just something I wanted to
But
call
I'm
out.
I'm also not surprised because he didn't have to include it. He could have edited it out. It's his documentary, but he kept it in there for a reason because he wants people to see, well, this is what they think of me. It's actually working for him, I think, from a political standpoint, because again, you have to understand who his constituents are. Young people who
Hmm.
feel like they're up against an establishment that does is so out of touch. Whereas Shine's whole political positioning is he can relate to the younger generation. And I think that that to me actually helps his story. He's not afraid of what people have said about him. It adds to his character.
Hmm.
He's very straightforward. Even when he was talking about anything that he has done, he never really shied away from saying the wrong thing, being in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing. He's hell bent on standing in accountability and even using his nepotism to do that. He's still holding himself to an accountable level. And I think that that is what people will deem admirable and
Hmm.
resilient and relatable.
Yeah.
But even then, we wanted more. I wanted to see him with the people that
Which people them?
in Belize.
Of
Like
what we see it when when him a walk down but we
we
never
never
see the real
see.
ends. We never see
Yeah,
the real ends.
you know what I'm talking about. We see it, but we glimpse it, but we
But
never really
really
see it.
see it.
You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the other thing, and I wanted to point this out to you because I know the detail oriented you. I wanted to know if you saw it. So when they were talking to Barrington Levy, right? And you know, I'm going,
Shulu wale 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 bili di do li do lo.
oh, scene.
Yeah, SCENE. I saw that. I saw it. I saw it. I was like, somebody did not edit the subtitle
Somebody never
properly.
knew. I said I seen
Scene. SEEEN.
SEEEN.
I saw it 2 times. I was like, scene. I saw it.
But I thought that that was said. I was like, "Minua secretary, I got
Me
catch this
been
something."
seen.
I have to
Me
bring
been.
it up. I have to bring
You know,
it up.
like sometimes I'm just like, you know. But I was like,
Okay, but that's something again that we would really get because
yeah, we would.
that's
Yeah,
something we would know.
yeah. It's
But I
like
thought it was
scene.
pretty
Yeah,
interesting. So
yeah.
again, I think overall, like we kind of really talked about. Oh, go
Some
on, go on.
something about that song that he does with Barrington Levy gives me a belly feel. The way it's shot, it feels
Did Hank
like
Williams produce that?
um
Hold on.
you could look it up.
Yeah,
But
let
I
me look.
just feel like when they're in the car, the kids
Mm-hmm.
running beside the car, I'm like, why does this feel like a scene out of Belly? And that song kind of came out or around or close. I don't
No,
know.
it was way after.
I don't know.
Mark Classfield directed that video.
I don't know, but it felt bellyish to me. I don't know
Belly came
why.
out in the 90s,
N-
I believe.
Yeah.
The video came out in 2000, May 27, 2000. His album came out in September of 2000. And
Mm.
the nightclub incident happened in 1999. But here it says recorded in 1999.
It was recorded. It may not have
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
released. Yeah.
Yeah, released in 2000. So, and then when was Belly released? Let's see.
I wonder if Belize and feel aware
1990.
that he goes to Jamaica and record this video and not Belize. Do you think they shot it between Jamaica and Belize?
No, I you got to think about the time
Yeah,
period of which, like that was the time period where Jamaican
dance
artists were on
is
fire.
fire. Oh.
Dancehall was on fire. Like everybody had a dancehall remix. I had a dancehall artist on their remix, and there was a lot of like crossover collaboration at that time. So I don't think that um him not shooting in Belize was really an issue. And I think he comes from Brooklyn. So we talk about Brooklyn all the time in terms of cultural
Mm-hmm.
connectedness, like the closeness of which the islands really feel.
Listen,
We are
the
lost
guy
though.
was like, Derek stood up on the 19th or something. He's like, I feel very safe right now, right? He's like, it wasn't like that.
Yo, between him and
And
Nori, yo, they
Nori,
were putting me up. Like it was
he's
so
like,
funny.
I
I
feel I
feel
feel
very
very safe
secure.
right now. It wasn't like
Nori was like, I want to go to Belize so I can vote.
that. About wait, is
Yo,
that
Belize
legal?
is that legal? Yeah, they were so colorful in their commentary of him that I think they added some lightness to all of the
Yes, levity
heaviness of what.
to the
Yes, because his mom barely cracked a smile. Yo, she
she's
did look
like,
like Shelly Thunder in some of them
mhm,
picture there. She kind of remind when she had
the bang.
the bang with the mushroom haircut.
Mm.
Yeah, that was quintessential auntie hairdo. Them time.
But anyway, you should watch it, I guess. You learned something and we just see what, his political future looks like and the future for what he's doing for Belize. I think that's what's important for him. And I think he recognizes that importance just because of the grounding he got when he lived with his uncle and his aunt. And um, maybe it's conjecture. Maybe, he feels like finding opportunities for the youths. They may not end up like him, where parents have to take them and bring them to another country like America, end up in the system, because unfortunately, that's an immigrant story that,
Mhm.
we all know too well. So, yeah.
I really like that he kept coming back to his purpose.
Hmm.
And like I like where he is now in terms of how he's moving in terms of the leadership that he's taken on and the accountability that he has over his own life and his own decisions. And I think that to me is kind of like that resilience in a way that you can kind of relate to. So I do recommend that you watch it just to kind of get context. And if you've been kind of seeing him all over your timeline and you're like, well, who is this and
By the time this
what?
come out, they may not be seeing him on the timeline as much. Maybe, I don't know.
You never know because politics is always a thing, like, and I think also, yeah, I think that will still he'll still be kind of talked about because people watch things in their own time. And internet clips live for a very long time. So
If by this recording somebody not clip it's the West Indian accent already, psh, you know.
well,
So,
yes, you should watch it. I think support the people doing things.
yeah, watch it. And as I
Honorable
love to
Shine
say,
on Hulu, so
the
you guys should check it out.
it's the
All right,
honorable Shine. All right,
on
walk
Hulu.
good. Mm-hmm.
Bye, people.